Cheers,
Cool.
cheers, cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, you're right. This one does have a little bit of a strange taste.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I don't hate it.
Yeah, it's unique.
Yeah.
Drunken whale sea gay.
You know, this might just be my brain playing a trick on me, but it gives me like a little bit of a tingly feeling when I drink
Yeah,
it.
a little bit.
You get that too?
Yeah, but I feel like there's like another kind of taste in there. Like I don't. Maybe we were talking about whiskey before, so I almost taste like a whiskey like aftertaste.
Something like that. Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, it does kind of have a whiskey aftertaste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But hey, I've seen this before, and I mean, not many sake labels have a big whale on it, so I thought
the drunken whale.
Drunken whale.
Okay. I like that symbol.
Yeah, man. So today, though,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about something interesting that
Sure.
is always something that sticks with me wherever I go in Japan. It's like the danjo kanke. It's like how men treat women in public, like ladies first or chivalry. How would you explain the topic today?
Why are you pinning this on me? How would I explain the topic
Today.
I think I don't even know if I would say we have to narrow it to specifically how men treat ladies, but maybe just how men and women interact.
Okay.
In public here in Japan.
Okay.
I think is really, really different.
Yes.
And I know there's kind of like the stereotype, because you often hear, especially like among talking with Japanese people here, like there's a lot of girls that the reason why they like Western men is like Western men are considered more romantic.
Yeah.
Now that's complete BS.
Yeah.
There's some good things and some bad things. BS is bullshit, by the way. I felt like I needed to explain that.
Yeah.
But it's not true.
Yeah.
But it is different. Like the two cultures are different, and you do notice that both in public and the workplace, and I mean even in private life, men and women are treating each other quite differently here.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, right off the bat, like in the business workplace. So I think, and this is just my own opinion, but I think that men and women work closer together here in Japan than back in the States.
What makes you say that?
So here, I commonly see like drinking buddies, or like after hours, like just going and like having dinner together. I see a lot of like kaishain or business people, going and doing that after work, and it's almost always men and women. Like sometimes you'll see like just men or just women, but more often than not, it's mixed groups.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's really something that's that common in the U.S.
Yeah. When you say that, it's like, going out to get drinks with the boys or getting out to get drinks with the girls,
Yeah, something like that, where I think it's not like men and women don't work together in the US or, in other places of the world, but I think there's like definitely a barrier, it seems.
Yeah.
And especially with like, once that starts mixing into private life, it's like, okay, well, you're kind of infringing on like relationship territory right there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird for men and women to interact with each other from a Western standpoint.
You know what really got me now when you're talking about that, right, is I remember when I was in college and I heard about my friends, they would go on trips with like boys and girls, and they would like stay in the same hotel room.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was super weird to me. I'm like, yeah, because it was like normally the girls would get a separate room, and the guys in America, right?
Yeah.
So like, wait, so you guys and like everyone's okay with that?
Yeah, it's just like no one had sex or anything.
Yeah,
like,
right, exactly.
No, it's like strictly just like a friends thing.
Yeah.
So, that's something that I think is really progressive in Japan.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna go out and say that men and women are treated equal, but in that aspect, I think there's a lot of equality right there. And I think that's something the U.S. could actually learn from.
Yeah. because in the U.S., if that happens, you always know that like something's happening.
Yeah, there's always like an implication, like yeah, they're sharing a hotel room.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's really different.
Yeah.
Something else I notice here, and I actually find that I do this now.
Okay.
I don't even know when I started doing this. Is men and women typically walk together in the U.S.
Yeah,
like
right.
when they're walking on the street. But in Japan, what you'll notice a lot is a lot of the time the guy will walk in front of the woman.
Yeah.
Have you
I've
noticed
seen that? Yeah.
And it's not like a sign of like disrespect. I don't know why it's that way. But I actually find I do this with my wife now too.
Yeah. I thought I do that with Natsumi too, but that's just because I walk faster than her, and then I realize, oh wait, I have to walk slower.
That's fair.
You know,
I do kind of power walk.
Yeah.
I picked that up from my mom.
Yeah.
My mom used to just leave me behind, like when we would go places.
Your mom is a force to be reckoned with.
She is like a pure businesswoman.
Yeah.
So I remember just as a kid, like she would take me to go work, and like I used to have to like run after her.
Yeah.
Like when we were going places.
Yeah, but one thing that I thought was interesting too, and I mean, this isn't necessarily like men and women kind of thing, because in the States you do this for both people, but people don't like open the doors for people here. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Like, because in the States, it's like you like, originally you did it mainly guys would do it for girls, but now you kind of do it for everyone. But like, like I remember, so in Boston, right? Or well, where I grew up, like people like, when someone's coming up, even if they're like 15 feet behind you, you'll like wait and keep the door open so that they come, so the door doesn't close on them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I've never really seen that here.
I would argue that I think that's Tokyo culture.
Tokyo culture? Okay.
Because I do see a little bit of that down in Shonan.
Okay.
Just once again, just
you and your Shonan.
Push Shonan in there about how superior of a place it is.
You and your Shonan, man.
But yeah, I think that might be a Tokyo thing. I'm not sure, but I do know what you're talking about, because especially something that really offends me is in the morning getting on the train. There's some dudes that will straight up just like shove a woman out of the way to get on the train.
Yeah.
And it's like that idea.
Yeah.
I mean, shoving someone in general, it's bad behavior, right?
Yeah.
But it's like from a Western perspective, like almost I almost to an extent where maybe there's just a too much emphasis on trying to protect women.
Yeah.
But from a Western perspective, it's like this idea of like you need to treat women better than men.
Yeah, like the
public.
Yeah, the traditional view is that like women and children are meant to be protected, and men are meant to be expendable.
Yeah.
So you put yourself out first.
Yeah. So which it's honestly, it's probably not good to really go too far that direction at the same time, but it's like that's kind of ingrained in my head because of, where I'm from. And so, all in the morning I'll see like I always feel bad for it, especially like, you'll see some like junior high school girls like, are already like getting lost in the crowd. And then some guy will just like bash her out of the way to get on the train just because he wants to get on.
Yeah, that's so sad.
So that's definitely something that like I don't know. I really notice as a difference.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed, so this is only anecdotal, and this is from like the women that I know and the women that I've talked to.
Yeah.
Because most of my staff, of the women, they're married and stuff. And I feel like in Japan, like the role of husband is kind of different. Like, of course, like the action of what he does is the same. Traditionally he brings the money home, right?
Yeah.
But like, I feel like in Japan, it's almost like the wife is expected to be like his mother and take care of everything in the house.
Yeah.
Whereas like my role is to be like the protector and the protector of the house,
Yeah.
So like that's really different.
Yeah.
I feel.
No, I completely agree. I think traditionally speaking, I think like the mom is like a really good way to describe it, because like you see like a lot of married couples here in Japan, especially older ones.
Yeah.
And usually the wife is like really acts like mom.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird dynamic too if you start throwing in like age differences.
Yeah.
Because something that once again, I mean, this is completely anecdotal, but I feel like people marry a lot closer to their own age than in the US.
Oh, really? Like, what makes you say that?
So I know several people in the US who have like a pretty wide range of age between spouses. Like my sister, her husband, I think her husband's 10 years older than him. And you know, I have 2 or maybe even 3 friends who have a 5+ year difference.
Okay.
I'm also, I think, 4 or 5 years older than my wife.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah, because Yui's 28. I'm 33.
Okay.
So like I think age differences in Western culture are a lot more common, whereas a lot of the couples that I know here in Japan, and I'm not going to count mixed couples.
Yeah, right.
You know, Western influence start going in there, but like purely Japanese couples that I know, all of them are within 4 years of each other.
Actually, hey,
oh yeah, we can actually.
What's the
I'm curious.
between you and your husband? 11.
Ah, okay. She just.
You do that?
Oh, you just ruined my whole speech.
You're
shot
wrong.
down in the first person.
Shot down.
All right. Well, fair enough. But it has been a common enough thing that I've taken notice here. So
yeah,
maybe it's complete nonsense.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I kind of get that, you know.
But like all the couples. Well, okay. Now most of the couples. I can't say all of them now.
Yeah.
Most of the couples I know are really close in age here. Especially when you get to like the more younger generation, like people in their like 20s and stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just a thing with people in their 20s, but yeah, I feel like probably part of it is I think the way that people are meeting people here. I think there's a lot more people that get married to people that they work with.
Yeah.
Whereas that's kind of a taboo thing in the US.
You know what's the weirdest thing is like, so you're right, because in the States, right, you're not allowed to date coworkers.
Yeah, it's actually a fireable offense in many companies in the US.
But it's okay to like be married to a coworker.
Yeah.
At least that's what I think.
It's super common at my school.
Yeah.
There's been a ton of teachers that ended up getting married. At my school. At least there's 2 couples right now, and then there's one couple that retired maybe like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like super common, like especially among like teachers. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I never really worked in a traditional company, but that whole idea of like, you don't bring love into the workplace. There's no place for it in the United States. Like, I feel like when this goes back to like, you know, after I was drinking too, it's almost like I feel like in the States, now that you're talking about this and I'm putting this together, it's almost like in the States, men and women cannot interact without something happening. In Japan, it's much more open.
It definitely seems like there's like rules, right? There's like rules where men and women can't be together unless it's either a structured environment with other people around, right? Or B, they're like in a relationship.
Yeah.
Like the concept of like men and women just being friends and doing like a platonic activity, even in a private setting, is like it's still there's like that hint of like scandal.
Yeah, well,
you know?
Like in high school, I had a couple of friends who were girls, and like where there was never anything romantic with us, but everyone thought I was dating these 2 girls.
Yeah, exactly, like, right?
Yeah, it was just so weird.
So I mean, here it's like, you know, I've even gone and done this. You know, most of my coworkers are female. It's just kind of the nature of being an English teacher. It's a predominantly female industry.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'll go out and drink with them, and you know, obviously nothing happens. So it's like it's just such a normal thing here. It's like you don't even think about it. So that is a really I remember when I first came here, I was dating a girl, and this wasn't a very long thing. It was like for a month.
Okay.
And what I'm about to explain is actually the reason why we broke up. So she was working at a company, and she would regularly go out drinking with her boss.
Okay.
And her boss was a guy, right? And for me, that was something I was just like really not okay with.
Yeah.
I was just like, dude, I mean, we've established that we're dating, like...
Yeah. Yeah, because in the States that would never happen.
No, that's like real taboo. That's like if you're a person moving to the US, you do not hang out with people of the opposite gender.
Yeah.
In a private setting.
Yeah.
And going out and drinking is like more a private setting.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge implication that you're doing something romantically or something with them. So I kept getting frustrated. I'm like, you can't go out and drink with this guy. Yeah. And she's like, well, I don't understand. He's my boss. Like, this is normal. Like,
it's kind of, it's an extension of work.
Yeah.
Actually,
and it's like the whole idea is like, in many companies, they will purposely pair men and women together because it's this idea of believe that men and women like naturally work well together, and they make strong bonds and become a strong team. And so it's like really common for, especially like in marketing and sales, like men and women getting paired together, and then, they go team bonding activities and go, drink and, do stuff. And they'll go out and do road trips too.
Yeah. And it's like never.
Yeah. And it's like you'll go on a road trip and it'll be like, 2 girls and a guy or the opposite. And it's like, it's literally no big deal.
Yeah.
And so that eventually ended up breaking up because I was just like, no, there's something there. And, upon, thinking about it, after the fact, it's like, oh, actually.
Yeah, there probably wasn't, no, I get that, it's just really funny because, I mean, this conversation is going in a very different turn than I thought, which is great because this is very interesting to me, but like, yeah, it's almost like, guys and girls cannot get along in the States.
That's the belief.
Yeah, that's the belief.
And I completely believe that. Like, I went my entire life thinking like, oh, there's no such thing as having a female friend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I always used to think like, I've had jealousy problems, when I was a teenager and stuff. And I always used to tell like the girl that I was dating at the time, like, there's no such thing as a guy who wants to be your friend, right? If a guy wants to be your friend, it means like he wants something from you. Yeah. Like usually he wants to like sleep with you or he wants to, date you or whatever. He wants something from you. And it's like, I've had that mentality my whole life until I moved to Japan. And I'm like, wait, men and women can just be friends here and like coworkers?
Yeah.
What?
It's funny though, because that concept is still like so ingrained in my mind that logically, I know in my mind, so like when my friends would tell me that, they went on a camping trip with people of the opposite sex, or they went on went traveling in a hotel or whatever. Like, I know logically they're just friends, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, are they like, because that's like something I can't get rid of.
Yeah. And I mean, there's still scandals here.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course.
It's not like it doesn't happen, but it's just by and large. I mean, like a perfect example is like the setup that we have here.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Your assistant is a female.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And it's like that's fine and normal here, but in the U.S.,
it'd be like, oh,
it would be like, what's going on there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just so interesting. The topic of chivalry here, it's like, I feel like there's like kind of two things. There's like the surface level thing of, a lot of people look at Japanese society and think like, well, guys are really rude to women.
Yeah.
And, Japanese men are not good to date.
Yeah.
Like I hear that all the time. Like, Japanese men aren't good partners in relationships, and Western men are so much better in relationships. And it's like that is the stereotype that you often hear. But like, there's so much more to like how men and women interact here that. Like it's just not doing it at service by just making that assumption.
Well, I mean, especially like, so me, so I used to be Christian. I used to be religious, and pretty conservative. I mean, I still am conservative, but I was even more conservative. But like going back to like relationships with women and stuff like that too. Like in my Christian circle, like women were fragile creatures to be taken care of. But then you have like in American society, they're like a prize to be conquered too. And so you have those two competing ideas to the point where it's like, you cannot have female friends because it's not gonna work, And I almost felt like there's this on the surface, it's like, oh yeah, you take care of women, ladies first, all this stuff. But on the backside of that, there's this like seeing them as objects to like conquer.
Yeah, and I think there's like it's kind of evolved a little bit now, like with a lot of like feminist movements in the past couple decades. Like if you go to the US right now, there's definitely this mentality of like, especially in the workplace, of women wanting to like prove themselves. Because women recently just entered the workforce in mass in the past couple decades, right? And so now if you're working alongside women in an American company, I want to say it's like there's like an atmosphere of like apprehension between men and women interacting in a workplace, because it's like, men don't want to necessarily like get in trouble for something, right? And I feel like women also feel like, I don't want to become close to a guy because I don't want people to perceive me as relying on him.
Or I don't want to get close to this guy to find out that he's just trying to get into my pants.
Something like that, right? Where I'm sure that still exists here, but I think it's a lot more, it's obviously a lot more accepted that like people can work together, So it's just so crazy. Like it's there's definitely I would say overall the quality of life for women here in Japan, or I wouldn't say quality of life. I would say the overall freedom that women have here in Japan, I would say, is probably a little bit less than the US. However, like we discussed, I think that there are some really progressive things in Japan in the workplace when it comes to like men and women working together.
Yeah, it's funny because like I, not just me but a lot of foreigners, when they come to Japan, they live in Japan, they talk about how like women have no rights, or there's a lot of like sexism in the workplace, which there is, of course, you know. But what you're talking about now is something I never really considered up until now. Like, of course, maybe you have those things, but on an individual to individual level, it's a little different.
I think this is something that's really never talked about. And I didn't even know it existed until I moved here. Because it's just like I think it comes from the whole like senpai kohai mentality. So for those who are unaware, in Japan, it comes from school, right? And your senpai is like kind of like an upperclassman, kind of think of that, and kohai is like a lowerclassman, right? And so you kind of have a responsibility if you are a senpai, right, to kind of like take care of your younger classmen. But it's more than just take care. It's like you're kind of like enticed to become friends with them. You know? And I think that mentality here is like a really, really core part of Japan. And it kind of transcends gender. You know? It's like, it doesn't matter if your senpai or kohai is a man or a woman. It's like, this is the person that you're supposed to learn from or teach. Right. And so because of that, you need to become close. You know?
It's funny that you say that, because I remember this was back in like 2008. So before I even went to college, my Japanese teacher at the time, she was studying in Salem, Massachusetts, and I went to a graduation ceremony. And I remember talking to one of her friends. I was like, "Oh, are you Kei's friend? Like, Kei-san no tomodachi desu ka?" I was like, Kei-san no senpai desu. No, kohai desu. And I was like, "Oh, you're kohai? But does that mean you're her friend? Kohai desu." I'm like, what? Because like those things don't.
It's such like, it's such a like I don't want to say it's a weird relationship because I feel like that's a negative thing, but like it's such a different relationship because that is a completely alien concept in Western culture. It's like you don't have senpai and kohai in Western culture. Like, you know, even back in high school, like I was friends with really younger people.
Yeah.
Than I was, but like I never felt like I was
like you had to take care of them.
No, it's like we just kind of treated everybody as equal.
Yeah,
you know, it's like I was a senior and I had freshman guys in my group of friends, and it's like you don't even really think about their age. It's like everyone just talks to each other, and that's very much American culture. Everyone's kind of put on a level playing field. And it's the same thing with work. It's like I used to do construction with my brother, and you know, I would be working alongside guys who've been working construction for like 15, 20 years, right? And here's me, like fresh out of the military, like young 20s, going to college. Like I'm a kid to them.
Yeah.
And like we talk to each other like we're equals. There's you know, obviously they're sharing some tools of the trade and trying to get me to learn, but like at the same time, it's like we're still just talking to each other like we're on the same level.
Your experience is different, but you're still like equals, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, but that does, I guess, like you said, plays into like it's more about the timing of when you entered versus like who you are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? So, a lot of people probably, especially like older people, they know a lot about like America's lady first culture, like opening the doors for women or whatever.
Yeah.
Like what? How do you feel like that's changing in the United States?
You know, I think there was a lot of pushback against it.
Yes.
Probably 10 or 15 years ago. I think traditionally speaking, America has practiced, it's usually referred to as chivalry.
Yeah.
Right? Where guys will hold the door open for ladies, and you know, it's like you see those old videos where the guy takes off his jacket so the girl can step in the puddle. Yeah. That is, I'm about to swear, that is stupid as hell.
Yeah.
Walk around the damn puddle.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put my jacket, my nice jacket on the puddle so you can step in the freaking puddle.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here. I'll hold your hand while we're walking around the puddle. That's fine. But I'm not going to dirty my clothes just so you could walk on the damn puddle.
Depends on how important the girl is. But
anyways. But you see that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think 10 or 15 years ago, there was this like huge pushback. And I think from men of like, well, you know, women don't act like princesses, so why should I treat them as a princess?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit ridiculous if you think about it.
Yeah.
And then I think recently, which I think probably has something to do with like a lot of push for like, you know, maybe different thinking on gender, at least gender like traits and like what defines a man and a woman.
Yeah.
I think recently chivalry has kind of just opened up to, okay, you know, maybe just holding the door for a person is just a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of swung back in that direction where it's like, you're not necessarily holding the door open for women anymore. You're not doing these gestures for women anymore. You're just doing them for people.
But when you go on a date, the guy's expected to pay the first date.
Oh, man. Well, some things never change.
Some things never change.
You know what I mean?
But I just got to tell you, though, it was like a huge revelatory experience for me. Like, this was back some years ago when I still lived in the States. But, like, I remember I opened the door, because I opened the door for everyone. It just happened to be a girl.
Yeah.
And the woman was like, I can open the door myself, thank you. I was like, okay.
That's never happened to me.
That's never happened to you?
No, I've heard of it.
That's happened to me before. Yeah, that is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people get angry at that, you know. And I can understand why. You know.
I can't.
No, because it goes back to the concept that like women are weak and can't take care of themselves, so you need to take care of them.
See, I would argue that that's old-fashioned thinking.
I know, but
even for a woman to think that, I think that's old-fashioned.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really thinking about it then, but I know she thought I was thinking that, so she reacted that way.
I totally understand, but I think that's really old-fashioned thinking for a woman to think that. Like, you shouldn't think that a guy's just holding a door open for you because you're a woman these days. You should think that this guy's holding the door open for me because he's a nice person and he wants to hold the door open for someone.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, yeah, that's kind of how I think. But yeah, it's different. I think that is something that I think Japanese culture could learn a little bit from Western culture is the so here in Japan, I think there's the concept of omotenashi, right? Hospitality, right? And I think Japan, like, I think everyone pretty much agrees that Japan does that better than anywhere else in the world, right?
Right.
You go here, and especially when it comes to customer service, you were treated like a god here. People they will take care of everything. Like, one thing that blew my mind was going back to my wedding.
Yeah.
Like, having those little assistants that me and my wife had, like, they were like constantly adjusting and making us look nice, like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
That attention to detail. But I think that in general, unless you're kind of out in the countryside, that's kind of absent in daily life. Like here in Japan, especially in Tokyo, you'll never see someone hold the door open for someone. Yeah. There's boom. It's like I got plans. I'm doing something. I'm going, and like I've actually ran into the door several times here in Tokyo because, we'll be going like down into the subway, right? And there's like, a glass door that you got to open. And because I'm so used to people just like, I think Americans just in general have a better situational awareness than many people over here in Japan. Because like when I'm walking behind someone when I'm back in Seattle, they'll like look behind them and go, "Oh, there's somebody behind me. Okay, I should leave the door open." Or at the very least, just do like the little gesture of like holding the door a little bit while you're walking by.
Okay, listen, I get that, but my dad also said this when he came and visited, but like when you are walking through the train stations at rush hour and no one bumps into each other,
well, that's a completely different thing.
No, but that's like sexual awareness too, right? Because they're figuring out like who's where, and they're just
fair. But I guess when I'm talking about that, it's just like, so when I was in the military, there's this thing of, looking behind you every 5 seconds.
Every 5 seconds.
Every 5 seconds. And when you're in infantry, it's like you have to do that. You have to be completely aware of your surroundings and everything, because it's like, if you're on patrol, the guy behind you could get shot by a sniper and no one heard it.
Yeah.
And if no one looks back, no one even knows that guy's been shot.
Yeah.
Right? So you're just constantly looking behind you. And I guess that's like a trait that I've picked up.
Yeah.
And so I still do that. But I think it's not unique to the military.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people just naturally do that in Western culture, and maybe that's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Just because America's just a little bit more of a dangerous place.
Not a little bit more; it's quite a bit more dangerous, man.
But I think because of that, like people are more aware of like at least the proximity of like people. And I don't see that here.
Okay.
When I'm walking behind someone, I get the door shut on me a lot, and it frustrates me.
I would just say that that's like a cultural thing, because people don't open the door for people here. Because it still gets me every time. Like when I'm in Shinagawa Station at rush hour and I'm getting out of the gates, like my dad was like, it was weird. It was like I was part of the hive mind. Like I was part of a school official. Yeah. Everyone just turned perfectly.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get that, like I've had the door shut on me a few times too, but when I've opened the door for people, they look at me with like a confused look on their face. Like, why is this foreigner opening the door?
Oh, really?
Me too. I get that sometimes too,
Yeah.
It's probably just a cultural difference, I think.
I mean, yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah. But so we talked a lot about danjo kankei here, and we talked as two white foreign men.
Yeah.
But I would be really interested in hearing what the viewers have to say about what we're saying, if it's true or if it's not.
So something that I would be very interested in knowing is a person who grew up in Japan and has lived in the States. I'd be very curious to hear what their perspective and seeing how men and women interact in the States. Because I mean, obviously growing up in different cultures, like our point of reference is going to be different. Yeah. So we're going to pick up on different things.
Yeah.
So I would be very interested in hearing
we
about
have a
that.
lot of those people watching this channel, so that'd be great. So please comment if you have time.
Yes.
Well, cool. I guess we can just end it here for today, and we'll talk next time.
Sounds good, man.
Awesome, man.